Rod's Tabletop Hoops. Hello everyone, I am back from a 3-week excursion. The first part of the excursion was this trip on a cruise to all these 9 different places. Ireland, Scotland, London, any UK area, we hit it. It was a wonderful time, and that's the start of the 3-week journey on the Norwegian Dawn. And it was a humongous boat, and we took that shot from a tender, which got us to a couple of our ports. There's another shot of the boat. It also had some great sunrises and some great sunsets and impressive views. I had not been on a trip like this in a long time. It also had a sport court on its highest deck, and so I'm using this as my tryout video for an NBA contract. 10 days, $250,000. Figure that's reasonable for a 56-year-old guy who went to Oregon State back in the 80s. So here we go. 3, 2, 1. I cut down the lane, make a nifty little layup. Things are looking pretty good. I think the scouts will like this. Go to the famous NBA corner shot here.
From the outside.
That was a clanker. So was that. So I had to regroup, get back in the flow of things. Finish on a strong note. Overall, 5 for 7. That's pretty solid. I'll take that any day. Did that in one take, by the way. I warmed up and shot it. Went to Tynemouth. This place is like an old beat-up castle, cemetery, military installation. It served a lot of purposes and is a great tourist site. It just like a little dungeony. You can see I can hide behind there. And then we went to the Turk's Head just a few blocks away. Had a nice pint of Green King, kind of very smooth finish, more of an ale version of like Guinness. I also had Guinness there as well. Wonderful beverage. And then we watched on the screen some strange sport called netball. It's like basketball, but these 7-on-7, people can't dribble. A very weird sport. We had asked some people there what the heck was going on. Now I looked it up. And similar to basketball, the rules, equipment, and team members are different. There's no dribbling, no running with the ball, 7 players per team. You got 3 zones. It's kind of interesting. Ball and basket are smaller. There's no backboard. Players designated to certain areas. Its advantages, they call it a true team sport because there's no ball hogs allowed or height advantages. There's basically a designated shooter and a designated passer into the shooter. It's just so strange. It's almost, it's almost seems backward. Like we were just like looking at the screen stunned. Meanwhile, in Stornoway, in the UK, Isle of Lewis, we went to the Criterion bar, and this lady was incredibly nice inside the bar, gave us a good beverage. Then we took the tour bus in Inverness, Scotland, saw Dunrobin Castle. That thing is huge with 189 rooms. There's also a big set of land where these rich folks would just take their peregrine falcons and have put meat on a string and take the trained falcon and let him go all around the yards. This entertained our group for a few minutes, and it was just pretty funny and just shows you how the rich folk, the royals, lived back in the day. And just quite impressive. But there was also other birds on site, like this funky owl. And just beautiful, though. This other owl right here was just really just perfect. Heading to basketball, tabletop basketball, Bankshot. Joe Bryan came out with a little note. He basically, I'm not going to read too much of this. It basically just says he's been busy with his college team sets. He's not finding the issues with low assists per team like a lot of other people are and a lot of I've seen. I don't own the game, so I'm not going to make a huge judgment on that. They are low on steals and block shots. That is just a fact. I wonder if there's just a way to double those. But the biggest piece of information here, Joe admits that he did not factor in the amount of shots per game for teams from 1962 per se versus the current season. The current season, you can have your quarterly action cards, a 36 per quarter, but 1962, you might want to use 45 cards per quarter because they took a lot more shots. And I'm happy that he's at least admitting that there was a few flaws. He slowed down his NBA set issuing until he takes care of all these problems. I think he's doing a great job. I've only heard good stories about how this game plays, so that's just as important as anything, having a good old time. And if the good teams win and the bad teams lose and the stats are relatively close, that's what you kind of go for. This is the most modern game that I've seen. I don't see any other games on the market that are brand new, but it's just like, once again, he's just saying go 36 cards, 42 cards, 39 cards. Just play it to your pace. That will give you the stats that you need. I'd almost like take a PTG method and say, I'm going to do a number of field goal attempts per quarter, perhaps. That is not always perfect, but it does get the job done in terms of accuracy. Moving on, we've got Hoops Tabletop Pro Basketball. Mark Vecellio, he's coming out with some newer seasons, and it's a slow release for Hoops Tabletop Pro Basketball and Hoops PC, but he's got a couple right around the corner, it's looking like, including, of course, the new 22-23 season this fall. He says October will have the set ready once he's reviewed all any typos and things like that, which he rarely makes. I've reviewed his stuff before. PC testing is the way to make sure that it's accurate. There's also 6162, a new version of 6162, because his old one was done at the start of his run, probably in 2013, 2014, and he's found that his game formulas and methodologies are far superior than back in those days. So he wanted to redo 61-62. So maybe Wilt Chamberlain can score 100 points in a particular game. He's also bringing out 81-82, a season that was missed by Fast Break Pro Basketball back in the 80s. So I'm all over that one. I want to see Maurice Lucas in a New York Knicks jersey and a few other things. Like Ray Williams had a great year for the Nets. And of course, my Trailblazers, they were very mediocre, but still fun team to play. And in addition, there's a 2000 to 2010 set, among other things. Just read up on it. Anyway, we made it to Copenhagen. Our final stop of our cruise landed us here, and we stayed here for 3 days, ate at the Burger Garage in Copenhagen. And here, Denmark, just a bunch of tall people there. That's all I'm going to tell you. Very tall people. Had some beer. This Milkeller, I think it's pronounced Miller in their language, but it was wonderful stuff. I had 1,000 IBU beer. It was ridiculous. And then we went across a few blocks and saw this microbrewery, and they got a lot of hazies, which are very popular right now. Went to little Apotek, this restaurant that's been around for a couple hundred years. Just great, authentic food. On to London. Of course, we went and had to see Big Ben in Parliament, and it was a beautiful sunny day. I had to get a good shot of Big Ben there. We, of course, went to Buckingham Palace, and there was a lot of people there, probably not as at certain times of the other times of the year, but it was wonderful, entertaining. Of course, with the Buckingham Palace, you got the royal gates, and then of course you look through those royal gates, you see those stationary guys. They look like toy soldiers or robots known as the bobbies, and that was interesting too. Went on to the British Museum. This is all I'm going to show you: a mummified cat. What you can't go wrong with a mummified cat, correct? And onto the Tower of London, this area where the grasses are used to be a moat. There's the Tower Bridge. And we checked out Bath, England, and those Roman baths, those ancient Roman baths. They got a hot spring underneath there, and it's just fascinating to see how that works. I took a little bit of video here just kind of showing the flow of the warm waters beneath the baths, but this was once again royalty. Love to have this. They have their own private bathing areas and stuff, men and women separated. A lot of history there. I could just talk for days about it. Just incredible stuff. Meanwhile, looking at some of this food, that was a roast beef day at one of the steak places in London. It was fantastic. That was less than $20. This was in near Trafalgar Square area where the entertainment district is and everything. There's some Asian-inspired food here. Fantastic stuff. Of course, we had to have dessert, and who doesn't want to have soft serve served to you in a waffle cone shaped like a fish? And that was a green tea combined with vanilla. And I found it pretty good. My son didn't like it as much. Here's these little Barney chocolate guys, little soft Twinkie guys. Gave us like 5 packages. I looked at this package and I go, That's an ABA basketball. Of course, it's probably just a beach ball or something like that. But that reminds me of 68-69 fast break with, the Oakland Oaks winning it all and the old red, white, and blue ball. We also tried some Doritos infused with a flame grilled Whopper, and they weren't that great. They kind of taste like burnt Doritos a little bit. They were trying to get that grilled effect, but still, you had to try it. Had to do it. Quick book review, boxed out of the NBA, Remembering the Eastern Professional Basketball League. This is a fantastic book, came out in the last couple of years. It's really got a lot of talk about how amazing this league was. It was basically the secondary league to the NBA. It was fantastic. Its best years, probably from the late 40s through the 60s, before the ABA came on to be the second best league around. But it had guys like Bill Spivey and Jack Molinas that were blackballed by the NBA because they were involved in point shaving scandals and things, but they allowed them to play here, and the NBA didn't like that, but eventually they still used them as kind of a minor league before the Continental Basketball Association occurred. It shows the glory years 54 to 67. Highly entertaining stories. They talk to a lot of the former players, coaches, observers, guys like John Chaney and Jim Boeheim. They played in this league in the 60s. You just didn't remember. They played on weekends, 2 games a weekend typically, maybe between $50 and $250 a game, depending on how good you were. And it was just fascinating to hear these stories about these guys. Even Paul Arizin, he was a Philadelphia Warrior. The Warriors moved to San Francisco. Paul said, I got a good job here and I love Philadelphia. Played in the Eastern League for 2 or 3 years. He made like $250 to $350 a game. He was so entertaining still in his later years. Anyway, moving on, but I highly recommend this book, by the way. It's just a fantastic book. It's got a little bit of photos as I show you there. This final portion of the video is basically a bonus section. There's no tabletop basketball talk here. It's about Spike Abbott. He's a beefeater in the Tower of London, and he was just an entertaining guy, and he tells a couple stories here I just thought would be entertaining. After this, it's just the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a great week, and it's great to be back here doing Rod's Tabletop Hoops. Have a good one, everyone.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're now standing on Tower Green, which is the village green of the Tower of London. Now, some village greens have a duck pond. Some are large enough to have a cricket pitch. However, ours has its very own private. The glass sculpture there stands in memory of the private executions, and it's not to be confused with the public gallows that we were talking about at the beginning of the tour that are up on Tower Hill. 6 people were beheaded here. 3 of those were Queens of England. But before I tell you about them, let me tell you about these buildings that are now surrounding us on Tower Green. Down this path to my right, you're going to come to the Bloody Tower, where you're going to see displays of Sir Walter Raleigh and the 2 boy princes we were talking about down at Traitors Gate. Moving to the right, the impressive Tudor building in the corner, that is the King's House. That's one of the last perfectly preserved Tudor buildings we've got left in London. Anyone wants to tell me why we've got no more Tudor buildings left? What year? 1666, every day is a school day in the Tower of London, 1666. That's now the home of the Constable of Tower of London, General Messenger. He spent 40 years as a Royal Marine. When he retired last August, the Queen invited him to Buckingham Palace. She was still alive then, God rest her soul. But she said to him, would you like to live in a grace and favour house overlooking the River Thames and be our 161st Constable? He obviously took the weekend to think about it. Now lives there with his wife and his family. He was the 3rd most important man at the coronation 6 weeks ago. He was the man that was carrying the black cushion that had the King Edward crown on, that was put onto the King's head by the Archbishop. The reason I know that is because he was escorted by 6 beefeaters from the Tower of London all the way down the aisle, right up to the altar. I was one of those beefeaters that did that job. And I'll tell you now, that man is a true gentleman, and I will tell you why. Because after the coronation, there was only one way back to the Tower of London, because all the roads were closed. So we went down to Westminster Pier straight after the coronation, and he commandeered one of the city cruise boats, which had 100 American tourists on it. 6 of us in our state uniform, him in his uniform, carrying the crown back to the Tower. We got on that boat. Needless to say, we had lots of selfies, as I'm sure you can imagine. It's a 15-minute journey back to the Tower of London. He bought us 6 beefeaters spectators 4 pints of beer each. Now listen, any man that buys me 4 pints of beer in 15 minutes, in my eyes, is a true joke. So, fabulous man. So great day, I can assure you of that. Great day.